After dinner, Grace personally arranged her accommodations. It was a very spacious and bright bedroom. A window on the wall faced directly out to the sea. Have a pleasant evening. Grace gave her a gentle hug and left the bedroom. After Grace closed the door, Sunon immediately began to check if there was anything unusual in the room. She carefully inspected everything, but found nothing suspicious. It seemed to be just a very ordinary bedroom. Her gaze fell on the lace prince's bed in the middle of the room. The sheer curtains of the canopy bed were being gently swayed by the wind from the window. Her feet were throbbing, almost numb. Ever since entering this world, her nerves had been tense, making her feel exceptionally exhausted. That prince's bed exuded a great temptation in her eyes. Should I just rest for one night? Sunon hesitated for a moment. She walked to the window, intending to close it, but was captivated by the view outside. The sea was even more mysterious at night. The waves crashed and surged, and though she couldn't hear them, she could still feel the vastness of the ocean. She was born inland and had never seen the sea before. She was momentarily lost in thought. Current pollution level, 6%. The sudden voice startled her. She hadn't done anything. So why was the pollution level increasing? She recalled the dish from dinner. Grace had specifically stated that it was freshly caught from the deep sea, and now she had only stood by the window, looking at the sea, and the pollution level had increased. Could the pollution level be related to the sea? Sunon immediately closed the window. She didn't know if that would block the pollution, but she had no other means at the moment. She knew very little about this world. She needed more clues. The first rule had warned the players about the dangers of the night, but it hadn't forbidden players from going out late at night. Therefore, she guessed that going out at night would yield some useful clues. She scratched her itchy thigh absently. The servants and attendants in the castle weren't resting yet. It wasn't a good time for exploration. She decided to rest for a while and go out late at night to prevent herself from getting dehydrated. Sunon took a hot bath for a full hour. She then rested in bed for 3 hours. When the night was deep and quiet, she finally pushed open the door to her bedroom. The castle was very quiet at night. The hallway was deserted. Sunon remembered clearly. Her bedroom was on the 3rd floor, the second room on the left after the stairs. She steadied herself by the wall and felt her way forward in the darkness. Finally, she reached the stairwell. She decided to check the kitchen first. At night, those strange dishes lingered in her mind. The kitchen might hold information she was looking for. The kitchen was on the right side of the dining hall on the 1st floor. She had seen many cooks bustling about in the kitchen when she passed by the dining hall earlier. She went downstairs to the 1st floor. Moonlight streamed through the windows, covering the floor with a layer of silver frost. It was quiet all around. She walked towards the kitchen. Following her memory, a sudden, whimpering sound made Sunon stop abruptly. Her heart began to pound. A faint noise came from the direction of the kitchen, like a woman crying. The sound was very soft. Sunon struggled internally for a moment, but decided to go investigate. She carefully approached the kitchen. Reaching the door, she noticed that it was not fully closed. It was slightly ajar. No light escaped from within. It was all pitch black. The creepy crying became a little clearer. Weeping. The sound was like some sort of mental pollution, drilling incessantly into her mind. She covered her head, shaking it vigorously. Weeping, Sunon couldn't control herself. Inching forward, little by little, she pressed her face against the crack in the door, trying to make out what was inside. It was too dark in the kitchen. She couldn't see anything clearly. She squinted, waiting for her eyes to finally adjust to the darkness. Her heart leapt. Sunon's eyes widened. Her pupils contracted. Her mind went completely blank for a moment. She saw a pair of pitch black eyes staring intently at her from behind the door crack. She didn't know how long they had been watching. They continued to make the whimpering sound. Current pollution level, 20%. Her whole body began to tremble uncontrollably. Her first instinct was to run. However, her body was so overwhelmed by fear that she couldn't move. The person behind the door suddenly spoke. "It's you." The voice was a little hoarse from crying, but it was clearly a young woman's voice. "Why are you in the kitchen at this time? Are you hungry?" Sunon's breathing was heavy, particularly loud in the dim environment. "Calm down. She needs to calm down." The rules had stated clearly there would be no mortal danger before the wedding, so that should be true. The biggest risk was likely this uncontrollable pollution level. Going out at night wouldn't be life-threatening, but if the pollution level exceeded a certain point, she wouldn't last until the last day. She would lose herself in the game. "Why don't you speak?" The eerie voice clearly dropped in tone. "Do you think I'm not worthy of speaking to you?" As those words fell, the temperature around her noticeably dropped. Sunon bit her tongue hard, the pain making her focus a little. In the last second of the eerie being's anger, she raised a finger and pointed to her throat, making a couple of eye sounds. "Oh, I forgot, you can't speak." The eerie voice returned to normal. The temperature around them slowly began to rise again. Sunon's hand, hanging by her side, trembled slightly. She clenched her fist tightly. Her whole body was soaked in a cold sweat. Her shirt stuck to her back, feeling cold and clammy. With a creak, the kitchen door was opened from the inside. The person hiding behind it finally revealed her true appearance. Sunon quickly glanced at her, then immediately looked away. Her skin had an unnatural blue-purple hue. She looked like she had been soaked, abnormally swollen. A chunk of flesh was missing from her left cheek, revealing the gruesome white bone beneath. It gleamed with a chilling light in the moonlight. Most terrifyingly, her enormous pupils were completely black, almost filling her entire eye socket. Barely a sliver of her sclera was visible, although it was just a fleeting glance. Sunon still noticed that she had long, wavy brown hair. A pearl hairpin was clipped to it. Perhaps it was the pearl hairpin that stood out so much. She quickly thought back, and almost instantly remembered where she had seen her before. It was the maid who had been standing next to her during dinner. Was it a coincidence or intentional? Could it be that the fairy tale world of the night, mentioned in the first rule, meant that all of the NPCs would turn into eerie beings at night? But looking at her, she didn't seem to have completely lost her mind. "What are you doing in the kitchen?" the maid asked. Sunon didn't have time to think further. She felt her pocket, thankful that she hadn't taken out her paper and pen. She lowered her head and quickly wrote down a line. "I didn't eat enough tonight. I'm a little hungry." "You really didn't eat much tonight," the maid nodded absently. "Come in with me. It's not very convenient right now. I can only find you some simple food." Sunon followed behind her. Into the kitchen, the maid lit a candle. The dim light instantly illuminated the kitchen. It also illuminated her hideous face. Sunon tried her best not to look at her, but her peripheral vision kept drifting towards her. The maid handed her a piece of white bread. Sunon breathed a sigh of relief, avoiding the area the maid had touched. She tore off a piece and put it in her mouth. She thought about what had just happened. She had been drawn there by the crying. Why would the maid be hiding alone, in the kitchen, crying in the middle of the night? In a horror setting, this was clearly unusual. Perhaps this was a clue she couldn't miss. She pondered for a moment, then put down the bread. She wrote on the paper, "Why are you hiding here alone, crying?" The maid's black pupils blinked. Seeing the words, she started crying again. "My sister is missing. She's been gone for a week. No one knows where she went." Sunon lowered her head and wrote on the paper, "Did you tell the prince?" "Of course I did," the maid said suddenly, "but maids often disappear in the castle. The prince says they must have angered the sea god, and that's why they mysteriously disappear." Angered the sea god? Sunon unconsciously tapped her finger on her notebook. Maids often disappear in the castle, and the prince explains it with such an absurd reason. There must be an unknown secret hidden there. She thought for a moment, then wrote another sentence. "Do the missing maids have anything in common?" The maid looked bewildered. After a long pause, she finally answered, "They are all young and beautiful." Sunon frowned. She thought of the strange reaction Eric had had when he saw her today. She vaguely had a hunch. As they were talking, the maid lowered her head again, sobbing quietly, "My sister and I grew up together, but now she's gone for no reason. How can I face our dead parents? If only someone could help me find my sister." "Congratulations, player. You have triggered a side quest. The missing maid." The maids in the castle often mysteriously disappear. Some say it's because they angered the sea god. Others say they couldn't bear the hardship of being a maid and ran away on their own. Please investigate the truth behind the maids' disappearances. Quest type: triggered. Non-compulsory quest deadline: before the end of this chapter. Quest reward: the sudden appearance of the quest box startled Sunon. She quickly scanned it. A new quest had been triggered. If she hadn't chosen to go out tonight, she probably would have missed it, although the reward was unknown. This quest was clearly related to the secrets of the castle. Perhaps it held clues for clearing the game. She chose to accept.